as heck do a lot of reading for my own growth on that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll kind of pass people homework if they decide they want to follow it through. So that was very intense. And then sure enough, the husband steps in later. And when the husband's there and he pulls his cards, and I'm not even kidding, pulls a lot of the same cards, but they were laid out slightly different. Because again, you have a different perspective. You have the male's perspective as to what's happening.
Sure.
And then by the third individual, who was the other, party that had been involved in the situation, pulls a lot of the same similar cards, but again, laying out in a very different way. So I saw all three facets, which was just really interesting. So overall, I was just, giving them the insight as best as I could for each perspective, as well as just in those types of situations, I surround them with a lot of goodwill and love, hoping that they'll be able to heal whatever it is that needs healing.
Did all three kind of know what was going on?
Oh, yeah. It was, so they had no idea, confidentiality is important. They have no idea what I told each one of them. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they talked about it afterwards. But you could definitely, as everything unfolded, like I had picked up, either, they all just knew about it or the wife had just found out or something.
Because why would they want, if two of them were keeping a secret from one, why would they say, I know what a good thing to do is, let's go see a psychic today.
And honestly, and I really respect what was going on in their situation. I don't think anybody really intends to cheat or wants to hurt any of their loved ones. It's one of those things that ends up happening. That being, said, I believe that all three of them wanted to be able to figure out, how do we move forward? Mm-hmm. What is the potential to heal, or what are my next steps? So that's usually where we'll end up getting somebody who comes in to have a session or a reading where they're at a complete loss and overwhelmed and trying to figure out, how do I get some clarity and insight to help me?
Did you ever see any of those three again for readings?
I didn't, but you know what? As you can tell, it's been probably 10, 11 years since
it's fresh in your mind.
It is, that is definitely one of the, readings and groups that has always stuck out, because I've always wished them well, and I really hope everything worked out for them.
Everything generally works out well in the end. Anyway, maybe not for the best, but it works out in the end.
It will.
It just seems to.
Yep.
Maybe it's the best for some, maybe not for others. From a very selfish standpoint, I'm going to ask this question. Is there anybody standing here with me?
I'm actually getting a little bit of what's more of a masculine energy over to your right side, but I'm not getting any information as to who they are. Their energy is actually quite quiet, and it's almost like they stand there with their arms closed, which usually means that they'll sit there and just observe things that you're doing without getting too involved. So I'm not sure who that is, but it's a little off to your right.
Okay. Wow. Keep an eye on this, would you?
I will, because it always intrigues me. I love visitors. I haven't ever had energies that were threatening to me. Mm-hmm. The only time they were threatening was when I wasn't aware of and I wasn't in tune with how to operate with this other side of myself. So it was usually my own fear that was keeping me imprisoned. Once I accepted it and was able to recognize everybody was human before, doesn't mean we like everybody. But with it, just being able to look at it from a compassionate standpoint, I enjoy it. Usually the energies that come through are well-wishing and wanting to be there to support their loved ones.
Let's talk about dreams for a minute.
Yes, one of my favorite topics.
Everybody has dreams, and dreams are a bizarre thing. They're never like life itself. They're always a little bit different. They're always either going to be very bizarre, very out there, or very structured, but in a strange way. And you wake up from a dream and think, wow, that was a wild dream. I'm going to try to go back to sleep and pick that dream up. And of course you never do. I never do, I should say.
Sometimes you do.
I can't.
Yeah, I definitely have.
I've wanted to, but it just doesn't happen. And then by the morning I wake up and that was a cool dream, but what was it about? I forget. And you move on with the day. What importance do dreams have?
They're so important. They're so very important. And you're absolutely right when it comes to the experience. There's a whole range as the type of dream that you can end up having. Typical normal dreaming, as I call it, where it's just your subconscious kind of processing what happened in your day. Like you mentioned, it's not going to make a whole bunch of sense. Some people don't even dream in color, where they tend to be a little bit more of a black and white dreamer. And usually you're going to have visuals and you're usually going to have emotions tied to it. Not a lot of the other senses tend to be engaged. Then again, you can go from the black and white into the color dreaming, but again, most people stay within that range. When you start to step into lucid dreaming, where you're aware you're dreaming, you're aware like, okay, I'm having this experience. I call that the doorway into superconscious dreaming. Now, what on earth does that mean? Okay. So superconscious dreaming is where it's more likely for your soul to be engaged is the best way I can describe it, which means that you start to now experience from all of your soul senses. You'll have smells sometimes involved. There's been times in dreams I've smelled a candle that was just blown out and I'll feel that smoke hit my nostrils.
While
even
you're
though
as part of the dream?
Yes, okay. Even though I'm in the dream. Same with being able to touch things with and feel the texture of it under my fingertips, feeling tears running down my face. That's when you're getting more into not just lucid dreaming, but superconscious dreaming. You're going to be aware of a beginning, middle, and an end. There's sometimes going to be a little bit of gibberish thrown in, but I find that's usually when it's your brain trying to comprehend something that's incredibly complex and it's doing its best job to symbolize it in a way that we're able to process it.
Can you use these dreams to work through your everyday troubles?
Absolutely. And that's the power of those superconscious dreams. We can have telepathic communications with our loved ones. Let's say that you ended up having a huge blowout with a loved one that lived further away. And it was something that just really kind of, ate you up. And sometimes when we go into those dream states, we'll have very intense conversations with the others involved. Or it might be where we're explaining our perspective from it. One of the things that I've experienced myself, as well as some clients have, told me when they're like, I don't know if this is normal, is where it's almost like a back and forth dream. The individual sees their perspective. They know they're part of the conversation. They know they were talking to the other person, but they just don't consciously remember what was said. And then the other person, you can ask them and they'll be like, yeah, I knew what I was saying. And then, it's like a conversation that just kept going back and forth. Sometimes that can happen over multiple nights. Visitation dreams from our loved one in spirits tend to happen in that superconscious state.
Those are dreams I have a lot. A family member, a grandparent, for instance. I'll have a grandparent visit me in my dreams, and it's just like they were right here.
Exactly.
But they've been gone for 25 years.
Yep.
What does that mean? Is that them trying to help you? Is it just a coincidence? What is that?
With it, and when you can, like the vivid, element of it, where you explained, you remember it even years later, you have more of the senses engaged. It's as if they are right here. Those are visitation dreams. And those are beautiful gifts that we tend to get from our loved ones in spirit. Think of it, our generations that came before us, they're very much interested as to what is happening in our life now. Not just because, hey, that's my grandchild. Mm-hmm. It's more so the choices and decisions and the way that I carried myself out in my life. How is that impacting the generations that came after? So they're very much interested as to the choices and decisions, any healing that might be necessary, how they can help support you along your journey and your path, because it also helps to support their healing and their understanding. So with it, at times, they're going to touch base and check in on us. Other times, they're there when we really need them in spirit. There's a client that had come forward, and with it, I could definitely feel grandparent energy around her. And at one point, I was like, did your grandma used to rub your back? Because I could see her grandmother doing that to her. Okay. And she even explained, she's like, okay, this is creeping me out. And she's like, because I just felt that. And she goes, but I thought I was making it up. And I was like, no, I was like, your grandma was just letting me know and showing me. And I was like, so that you could get that validation you needed to know she's there.
So you saw her grandmother rubbing her back.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. And what was cool, it was almost like a disembodied arm, to tell you the truth. It's not like I fully saw her grandma, and her grandmother didn't need to fully manifest herself.
How did you know it was her grandmother? Is that who you were talking about at that time?
No, actually, we weren't talking about her at that time. She was talking about something challenging going on in her life, if I remember correctly. And so again, at times when we're disrupted or we're upset about something, those loved ones in spirit will sometimes pop in because they're like, hey, I'm here to comfort you. I'm here to support you, just like when they were there for us in life. Or even if they weren't there for us in life, sometimes they're like, but I'm here now, you know? But with it, yeah, her grandmother didn't need to show her full self. I just knew it was her. I also knew some different, symbols and objects that her grandmother tend to love in her life. And I was like, she still uses those as ways to flag your attention.
When you have a dream with a loved one, a deceased, is it only a deceased loved one or can it be a loved one that's still with us that's in a dream?
They can totally still be with us. Absolutely.
Now, if I'm in the dream of one of my children, how do if my son says, Pop, I saw you in a dream, you were doing this, and this, and that. I say, oh, well, that's nice, but I was over here. How can I be in two places at once? How does that work?
The best way I can describe it is our soul is not 100% in a body. So let's say that you have your soul and we take a fraction of it, let's say 10 or 15%. That's the part that's operating and functioning within our body now. We still have all this other energy that to me is still working on what we call the other side, working in that spirit realm. That's the part that communicates, at least in my belief, that communicates through our intuition to our psyche, to our consciousness, to say, hey, don't forget what our agenda was. It's that energy also that can greet loved ones, when they have crossed over, we can still show that kind of a support. It's the same part that taps into, some of those dreams with our loved ones, our telepathic connection, like I had mentioned, where it's like let's say that your son was having a really difficult challenge when it comes to making one choice over the other. And at times we can sit there and pop in and sit there and say, don't worry, you already know what you got to do.
But you don't necessarily know that you're doing that.
Exactly.
Is that, I guess that's different than astral projection?
It's kind of similar a little bit. When you're having those super conscious dreams, the best way I like to describe it is that type of a dream is a whole different level of a dream. It's kind of like what I call the Matrix room, or anybody who watched Star Trek, the hologram room.
Okay.
You step in and you're like, all right, this is what I want to see. And our team are going to be our guides, our own higher self, and our loved ones in spirit. At times, they're going to use that space and that energy to be able to communicate things to us or put us in a situation that says, have you learned your lesson yet? Let's find out. It's almost like a simulated environment. Sure. Yeah. So that's where at times we can meet our loved ones, as well as being able to process, like you had mentioned earlier. Can it help us to process things that are affecting our waking state? Absolutely. And that's where some of those dreams will definitely come into place. And that's why I love the importance of having dreams as a tool and recognizing there's so much more to them.
What's the best way for Joe Average, who's not gifted such as yourself, to try to interpret their dreams?
Great question. One of the first things I would say is, even though somebody may not be as practiced tapping into their intuitive side like I am, with it, everybody has an intuitive side. So the first thing is being able to have the empowering, energy and the thought around, okay, I know that I dream. I may not remember it, but I have the full intention of remembering more, of being able to tap into it. So by having that intention out there, that's where we can start to tap into, okay, I have that opportunity. I know it's out there. I'm not going to force it, but I'm going to allow the possibility of what could happen. That really presents a lot of opportunity.
We're going to take down barriers and just let the thoughts flow.
Yeah. As well as put the intention out there. With it, obviously, the practical things of making sure you get plenty of sleep. Usually when we're really stressed throughout our day, the challenge with that is it really distracts us from typically things we're trying to work on an emotional and a spiritual level. So really finding the right balance and putting the right boundaries around things are going to be key, because it has to have the space for you to be able to connect with it. As well as, like you said, breaking down any limiting beliefs, thinking and knowing that I have the capability of tapping in my dreams, and I am intending it to be so. As well as sometimes, supplements like GABA, which is just if I remember correctly, it's an amino acid. It's something that's normal to our body. With it, it helps to kind of calm down the activity and the communication between neurotransmitters, making sure you're in optimal health. Those types of things will help to just allow you to just work and function so much better. And most importantly, having that awareness and the intention of being able to tap into it.
Some people have accused me of procrastinating because if something's going on,